Welcome to Season 2 of Bed and Butter, the hospitality podcast designed exclusively for budding students and aspiring industry leaders. The podcast is in partnership with Southern Maine Community College. We're thrilled to continue this exciting journey with you. Each episode will delve into the heart of hospitality, uncovering invaluable insights, trends, and strategies. Join us along with culinary professionals, entrepreneurs, hotel and cruise line executives. Whether you're sharpening your skills or stepping into the world of hospitality for the first time, Bed and Butter is your go-to resource. So let's dive in and spread the knowledge, one episode at a time.
Welcome to today's episode. It's not every day you get a chance to sit down with a CIA-trained chef and successful entrepreneur, but we're in for a treat today. I'm excited to have my good friend, Alex Chong, with us. From Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon, Alex's journey has been nothing short of remarkable. He'll share his deep love of food, passion for exceptional beverages, and the entrepreneurial spirit that's driven his career across the country. Let's dive into his story. Sit back, relax, and get inspired. Hey, Alex, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
My pleasure. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's pretty exciting for me. To talk to a guy who's from Maine. You've gone from Portland to Portland.
That's right.
I think that's pretty exciting for us to have someone with that kind of diversity in geography for one, but also in a career. And I think I'd love if you could spend a couple minutes just talking about your career and, some of the things that led you down the path of where you are. We'll get to the meat of what you're doing now and all the businesses that you're in, but I think it'd be great to hear some of that.
Sure. Yeah. I've always had an interest in food from a very young age. My dad was born in China. My grandpa was a chef. Funny enough, he didn't really specialize in Chinese cuisine. He had an American diner well before I was born, but he always cooked delicious family meals for us. So kind of grew up in that environment, not exactly a restaurant, but visiting my grandpa. And then as I was getting into food, it was kind of the beginning of the boom of the Food Network. So I had access to watching the very first celebrity chefs and kind of learn technique and just kind of get enamored with that. So I watched that a lot. And then I would just start, making recipes at home and cooking and presenting my meals to the family. So as soon as I could, I got a job at a restaurant. The first one was a small Italian restaurant in Falmouth. And then I got into my real first job, I would say, which was a small catering business in Portland. It's like a catering business and food to go, that type of establishment. And I worked there from about 15 until I graduated high school. And that was a really pivotal time for me. I had a great female chef mentor who has instilled good habits on me. She was, kind of showed me the ropes and gave me a lot of challenges and allowed me to, make mistakes and learn and grow. And then when my time came to an end there, she kind of sat me down, pulled me aside, and said, if you're passionate about this industry, I think you have potential. You might want to go on if you like it. And so at that time, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do for college. I was a good student, but didn't really want to go to a traditional college. And so I applied to the CIA, the Culinary Institute of America, in Hyde Park, New York, and one college application, and that was it.
And that's a great school. I think, a lot of our listeners are students either preparing to be a student in hospitality or are in the program, and some have graduated, and then there's other people in the industry. So that's a great program. So it was a little different. You said it was a business and culinary program to combine.
Correct. Yep. So I moved, let's see, I graduated high school and then I worked for about 6 months after high school and then moved down to New York. And basically down there at the time, you do your 2-year culinary associate's degree first. And then it was right at the beginning that they were offering a bachelor degree program, which was basically years 3 and 4 of where you did your core classes so that it would be an accredited bachelor degree. And then you did some specialized kind of restaurant management focused courses. And so I signed on for that immediately because based on my experience in the industry, I knew that working the line and being in a kitchen probably wasn't going to be a forever job for me. Even when I was young, line cooking just wasn't my favorite part of the job. I loved catering and I was going out on a lot of events catering, and I liked the predictability of that versus working a line in a restaurant. So I kind of chose my lane early, but even within that, I kind of knew that eventually I'd like to get into a different part of the business.
That's great. I think it's neat how our careers can move in one direction or another just by opportunities that come about. And
Absolutely.
that you had a boss that said that, and then you went to a school where it said, okay, you can be culinary, but you can also be a business entrepreneur. Now, that's one of the things I found most intriguing about you. I mean, yeah, we've all slung our eggs in our burgers and hash and done all that kind of stuff, and done. I haven't done the fine dining like you have, but I think what's neat is that you became an entrepreneur and started growing. And I think that's great for our listeners who are thinking that, I don't want to be behind the line for the rest of my life, but you got to have started there. And so you've kind of combined it all and become an entrepreneur in the food and beverage business. Tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, it was instigated out of necessity because the restaurant I was working at, my now business partner was the head chef at the restaurant I was working at before we started the business. And I went into work one day and was sat down. I knew I was in good standing, so I wasn't going to be terminated or anything. But I knew it was a serious conversation. The owner of the restaurant was there, the GM, my chef was there, and it was like 7:30 in the morning. So I was going in, I was AM sous chef, so I was going in to check in my orders and do prep and some butchering and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, what's going on? They said, hey, Alex, we got some bad news. We're going to close the restaurant, immediately. And so, it was a tough pill to swallow. I knew it wasn't my doing. And so they sat me down. They said, hey, can you finish out these holiday parties? We've got contracts for all these holiday parties. Can you work the next couple weeks? And that'll be it. And so that really is what initiated these conversations. So the owner of that restaurant sat myself and the head chef Patrick down, and he's like, hey guys, listen, you've been great to me. I think Pat was there 5 years. I was there 3 years. I don't want to leave you high and dry. Would you like to take over this cafe? And so it was this small cafe that we supported with daily specials, and we sent them food, and there was a whole different staff running that little cafe. And it was inside a really famous marketing agency out here called Widening Kennedy, and they really grew with Nike. They actually created the slogan "Just Do It." So
Wow.
yeah, so they're very famous out here. And so we got this great opportunity to run a little lunch counter cafe right in the middle of their building. And at the time, it's pre-COVID, they had an office building with about 700 or 800 people. So we worked Monday to Friday, we make lunch specials. We had a, espresso machine and a barista, and that's really how the company started. So the option was, be unemployed or try this little business that was pretty low risk. So we opted for that.
Well, I think the other thing, obviously there are opportunities that are created, but sometimes it comes out of tough situations. I mean, my career where I am today, a lot of that came out of a couple of bad things that happened, not my doing, and not even the person who, that happened to. It's just the thing that happened. So that's a great thing. You try to turn it around. So you've got a business going, but you started some other ones out in Oregon.
Yeah. So yeah, and from that point, that this is kind of where when we started the business, this is where it became clear to me that, well, that it was really good that I had the extra education that I did, because right out of the gates, I was having to learn how to do payroll and basic bookkeeping, and I was selling events and catering. So all these different things that I had touched on, I definitely certainly hadn't mastered those skills, but I had a little bit of exposure. Also, at that point, up until that point, I had only worked in kitchens. So this was 12 years ago. I was 28. I had been 14 years in the kitchen. As it turns out, I'm a lot more extroverted than my business partner. And so it was only natural that, I was kind of the front man. I was, happy to be front of the house catering. I was happy to bartend, happy to do all these things that I hadn't had the opportunity to do. And as it turns out, I actually enjoyed that more than, being behind the scenes in the kitchen. So that's kind of where I started to dig into some new skills and kind of took the restraints off of, I'm a chef, this is what I do, I make food. And I think that was really inspiring and eye-opening to me. And I think that's kind of the coolest part about entrepreneurship, is that you're not necessarily locked into a role. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, we like wearing all sorts of hats and, doing all different types of things. It keeps us interested. So, but your question about the businesses, so from the cafe business, it was a really unique model and really attractive to a lot of businesses in town. So we got approached by several other corporations just because Widening Kennedy was so well known, asking if we could do something similar within their buildings. And then during that time pre-COVID, I think we had 4 cafes at our peak, and then we also began contracting food service management and kitchen management out to some brew pubs in town. So I think at the peak of it, we had 4 cafes running, and we were supporting 2 brew pubs where we fully managed the kitchen staff. So it was pretty wild. We had 80 employees pre-COVID.
Wow, that's amazing. Go back to something you said, the Nike Just Do It thing. Doesn't you? I think you have a close relative that works for Adidas too, right?
My wife.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
Yeah. So
so I just thought it just dawned on me.
yeah, a little bit, I had to be very careful because, it's something I was never exposed to, but in the apparel industry, like I couldn't wear Adidas shoes at Wieden Kennedy. I couldn't wear Nike shoes when I visited Katie for lunch. Like, so I was torn, I'm just the middleman here. So, um, but yeah, so basically, I think that there's, there's times where you have to actively go out and sell your business and try to grow your business. And there's other times when you're just doing good work and you get noticed. And that's a really great time. That's natural growth, when people see what you're doing and they'd like you to replicate that within their business. So probably the best thing to come out of that, we got to open, design, and build the cafe at the Portland Children's Museum, which was a really cool project. And
Portland, Oregon.
yeah, Portland, Oregon. Yeah. And so we actually did that before I had kids, but it was still very cool to me because I grew up, in the Portland, Maine Children's Museum and just enjoying that environment. And so that was probably the coolest thing to come out of the cafe business. But I think, one of the interesting things, like my business partner is a great chef, spent most of his time in fine dining and hotels. And we would joke sometimes that, like, did you ever see yourself owning or working or having cafes? And I think, thinking about someone coming up in the industry, one of the biggest things I would say is don't pigeonhole yourself. Don't try to over define your career. Like, I think it's important to have goals in mind. I think it's important to go after something in particular and have a goal. But as you grow and progress, keep that open mind because I've now been able to turn that. I'm doing things now that I never thought I would have the opportunity to do, like and so this is all post COVID, but I'm doing all these new businesses and I've had the opportunity to get into some commercial real estate. I'm part of a bar group now and just things that, if you had asked me 10 years ago, I would never have seen a pathway to it. But all along the way, I've kind of kept an open mind and, you just have to believe that you bring something to the table or, develop a skill that brings something to the table for a team.
That's great. I think that's a great piece of advice for anyone is that you've got to, and I've always talked about a story, but you've got to be ready when that window of opportunity opens up. It means you have to keep doing the things you're doing and doing it well. And then at some point that window's going to open up. And if you're at your peak, you'll be able to get through that window of opportunity. But if you're not at your peak, if you're having a bad time, you're not doing well, and you're not doing the right things, you're not going to be ready to jump through. So I think keeping the open mind and waiting for that opportunity to present itself and then not being afraid to do it. I mean, I think that's a scary thing for anybody. And you've got a family of young people. So you're saying, okay, I've got to do this, but I got to make it work. So maybe you've got some extra motivation there too. You said that some of the ones it struggled through COVID. So that's a tough thing for a lot of people have gone through. And you're not alone. Every business in the country had those issues, but some of those didn't work out. But what came out? What are you doing now?
Yeah, so it's at the time I kind of thought my world was falling apart, but, like a lot of people did, just the unknown. So basically everything we did aside from catering didn't make it through the other side, just because a lot of our stuff was within businesses and within corporations, and they never really returned to the office in the same way. So our model wasn't really sustainable any longer. So through the meat of COVID, when it was really locked down, we just pivoted. We cut the team down just to the core team, brought the core team back as soon as we possibly could and started doing, we started a program called Family Meal, which everybody in the industry knows what Family Meal is. It's just a nice break for the staff. You get together, build camaraderie, and, it's a nice time for the kitchen to present something that they want to make that's off menu. So we started doing that twice a week. We did that for like 2 years just to keep the lights on, and it worked out. We built an email list of over 1,000 customers that became friends and regulars, and then that turned into catering business once events opened up again. So, it was scary, but we survived it, And then during that time, so I believe it was, I want to say summer of 2021 when things started to open up a little bit, we got approached by this bar group to basically do what we were doing for the brew pubs and manage their food service for this really large, cool new bar in Portland. And so we jumped on that opportunity and we did that contract for a year. And then at the end of the contract, we let them know, hey, this is a great bar, but we don't sell any food just because it's a more of a drinking and dancing establishment. And so we're like, we're gonna have to bow out. And then rather than that, they gave us the opportunity to invest in the business and become part of the team because they wanted to retain us. And so that's what we did. And that got us into this bar group. And now, so from summer 2021 to in the last 3 years, we've opened 3 more bars. So we have 4 bars that my business partner Patrick and I are partners at, and it's really exciting. And just let's see, in October of last year, I got to open a bar in my neighborhood, and I did the full bar program. I designed the recipes, I selected the spirit list, I did the whole thing, soup to nuts. So that was really cool for me because that's been something I've been working on with catering and just my own interest and research for the last several years. So that was my chance to run a bar, open a bar, and that's one that I oversee currently.
Wow, that's awesome. So it was back to the same thing. You turn something sour into something sweet, and you
Yeah,
just got to go for it. That's awesome. Hey, now, there was one thing you mentioned here. You were talking about. I asked you what your success habits were, and you mentioned a few of them. Can you just touch on that just real quickly?
sure. Success habits. So I think so one thing, I'm in a partnership, so I have a partner. It's I've never been a sole proprietor. I think like with any relationship, communication is key. As the more complicated life gets, the harder it is to keep an open line of communication with everyone. But that's when things go sideways, is when you stop talking to each other, because I think, from my perspective, having a partner has been great. There's plenty of lonely times, plenty of scary times, plenty of times where he and I are just in the trenches, shoulder to shoulder. And I've always been grateful to have that support, because at the end, I feel like if it was just my burden, sometimes it would feel overwhelming.
Well, I think
And
you mentioned once somewhere when we were chatting about you surrounding yourself with successful people, and that's
for
kind
sure.
of what you sounded like you've been doing for your whole career.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, something I learned too from my mentor through high school was, back then I felt like she was giving me responsibility that I wasn't ready for, but she believed in me. And so, I think that's a big part of it too, is, building a team. So whether it's people that you are doing business with, people that you admire, or even building your own team, is trying to recognize the potential in people and also not limiting their potential by, hey, you're just this, you know what I mean? Because you might have that, you have the dishwasher that works his way up to be, the manager of the restaurant. Because you have to try to recognize that in a team, because those are the people who will be with you, that are loyal. And I've had my right hand man, for instance, has been with us basically 11 and a half years. The business is 12 years old. He's been with me, like, he graduated college. I go, I need you back. Because he worked for me before he went to college. I got him back, and I mean, I wouldn't have been able to run the business without him, really. And also have 3 kids during that time, so he's been huge for me. And that's kind of one of those things, is he's my operations manager, worked his way up over the last 12 years, and so I totally believe in that. And then as far as the bar group goes, the whole group is 8 people. Patrick and I are 2 of 8, but on the team we have a CPA, an attorney, we have a marketing guy, we have a couple really talented bar operators. So everyone's hungry, everyone's ambitious, and everyone's going in the same direction. So, I want to learn from them. And I know that they believe that we bring something unique and special to the table as well. So I agree. I think that's important, to surround yourself with people you can learn from and that you're inspired by.
Oh, that's so true. And I think even in my role, I go back and listen. I mean, it's got to feel good for that first boss you had to know that she's allowed you to grow in this way. And I think this industry is one of those industries that you can do that. You can go from the dishwasher I mean, and then a lot of us go back to the dishwasher when you're in a restaurant. It's not the last time you'll be there when you leave it, but you can again grow through the industry. Now, I think you mentioned something about using the education you had. I think that's a real key component of this. Is like, yes, you can grow in this business, but education's important, but only if what?
Right, correct. Well, I think you really have to go above and beyond. Wherever you go to school, there's so many great programs out there, but you need to extract the most value out of it. And the only way to do that is to make personal relationships with your instructors, do extracurricular things. I had the opportunity at the CIA to go offsite. Like this was not, not school related, but they hired me to work events with them for their own private endeavors. And those were so amazing. I got to know my instructors as people, as chefs, see how they work outside of school. And, some of these connections I made were really important to me. And I just felt like that was invaluable. That's way outside of tuition. And so, and I would encourage everyone in the industry, I would really encourage everyone to work in the industry before they go to school and also during school, because you have to have real life experience. And I think, a lot of times we see the people that do work their way up from the bottom and through every level of any type of establishment, they're not always naturally equipped to be a manager, but if they have that skill, they can be the best managers because they understand each role, they understand the challenges, and a lot of times they earn the staff's respect a lot easier than someone who has just come out of school and hasn't really gone through the paces of the industry. People know that, if you're managing a kitchen or line cooks and you've never cooked, the guys know that, you know what I mean? So I think credibility is important. And I think that, getting your hands dirty and showing that you're not above any role in the business is very important.
Well, I agree 100%. And I still go into the laundry rooms occasionally in some of the hotels and I say, all right, I'm going to fold the fitted sheet. And they look at me like, yeah, this CEO's 65, 68-year-old CEO is going to come in and spot. And sometimes it rolls up in a ball and they laugh and think it's great. And the other times I fold and it comes out flat as can be, and they're just like in awe. So it's because I have done it. Now they know maybe I can't do it because I'm not doing it regularly, but I have done it. And I think there's an air around us who have done the job and who know what they're going through. And I think your point is right on spot. Now, speaking of I asked you about a funny story, and all truth be known is that I'll ask these questions, and then the guest will come back and give me some of the answers. But Alex kept giving me these little bits and pieces, but he wouldn't tell me the whole story. So tell me about the person you met, and then something about a wedding cake.
Person I met. Okay, well, the wedding
Famous person, chef.
Oh, okay, I got you. Okay, let's start with the wedding cake. We'll go chronological with it.
Okay.
So this was kind of going back to my high school employment when I felt like my mentor, obviously saw something in me because she was sending me out to do catering events by myself when I was 17 years old. So basically I was driving our company van to a wedding offsite, and I had the wedding cake and I also had all the rentals in the van. And so I'm driving, and I won't go too into detail, but I had to take a sharp turn to get on the highway from where we were. And I heard all the crates of flatware
Oh,
fall down, and my heart just stopped. I got off as safely as I could, as quickly, because I knew the cake was back there. And when I look back, there's a corner of the crate in the, like, it didn't destroy the wedding cake, but it was messed up. And I was about to cry. And so my boss was already on site. So I just go on site and I'm freaking out, and I'm like, Sarah, I this happened. And she goes, okay, no problem. So she immediately got with the florist, prettied it up, and problem solved. She wasn't even fazed by it. But meanwhile, I thought I was about to lose my job, and and so that was just a good lesson. And I think, like we're offsite caterers, so most of our job is improvisation. It's like, we want to have this family style meal at a winery with no kitchen. Okay, cool. Let's figure out how to make that happen. So, I think just most of my work for offsite catering is exactly that. It's just problem solving and making it happen. And then so that was a good one. Good lesson for me is that, it's probably not fatal. It could be, but just don't freak out. And nobody's panic is never good in a kitchen or in business. So just kind of take a deep breath. Take a walk if you need to, come back and figure it out. So that was a good one.
let me give you a final question because we're kind of running out of time. But
Yeah.
I loved your first statement. I hope you remember it. If you don't, I'm going to repeat it. But he said, "What would you say to our listeners when you talked about
Well,
ambition?"
ambition. Yeah, I think I I think what I said is, have stupid ambition, probably is what I said.
Yeah.
That's kind of something that I've been feeling is, and I think I mean, what I mean by that is just don't box yourself in, and it's like I've had various points in my career where I wanted to leave the industry. I didn't see a way to balance family, make my financial goals, or career goals really. And like I said, you just always keep yourself in good standing with wherever you're working. If you're an employee, be the best employee you can be. You may be recognized for opportunities, and be open to it, and don't keep yourself in a box to say, I'm just this, I'm just that. You are whatever you limit yourself to be. That's it. So just don't.
So can I use your quote? You should always have stupid ambition. I'm going to use that. I hope our listeners remember that, because I just think that's so basic, but so real.
Yeah, because you're not going to see the pathway from when you're a teenager or you're in college. You're not going to see where you're going to end up. I know that you could probably say the same thing, is that 20 years ago you probably didn't see yourself as a CEO, and or maybe you already were a CEO, but at some point you didn't see a pathway. And same for me. And so it's like don't try to predefine the pathway. It's the journey. Just keep high standards, be honest, work hard, and things will break eventually if you stick with it.
Well, it certainly has for you, and this has been exciting for me to have you on this. And from a kid from Portland to an entrepreneur and a business person in Portland, the other Portland. I thank you for being part of this and listen to our listeners. And I can't tell you how this has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's a joy to get to hopefully be a positive influence for the next generation coming up. And yeah, it's an important and worthwhile industry, and I think there's a place for everybody. You just have to you find your place.
That's great. Thank you, Alex.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Bed and Butter, the hospitality podcast produced in partnership with Southern Maine Community College. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you don't miss any episodes, and have a butterful day.